All right, you ready? All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We'll call to order the City of Indio joint regular meeting with the Indio Water Authority. Today is Wednesday, September 21st, 2022. My name is Oscar Ortiz, and I'm the Mayor Pro Tem, and I'll be chairing this meeting, filling in for Mayor Wayman Furman, who's in DC, advocating for our CV rail, which would be the train that would come from LA all the way to the Coachella Valley. So he's out a little busy today, so I'll be filling in. Can I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Holmes.
Present.
Councilmember Miller.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz.
Present.
And both Councilmember Ramos Hamid and Mayor Furman are absent.
Thank you. And also thank you to Vanessa Castillo and Rob, who are filling in for our city manager and our city clerk as well today. So we got a lot of substitutes today going on. We have no one signed up for invocation, so we'll go ahead and move on to item number 3. And Vanessa, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Right hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Attorney, do we have anything to report on closed session?
Yes, we do, Mayor Pro Tem. The City Council gave negotiation direction by consensus on items 3.1, 3.2, 3.6, and 3.7. There's no reportable action on items 3.3, 3.4, 3.5. I'd like to note for the record that the mayor was absent for closed session and Councilmember Holmes recused herself of items 3.2 and 3.3. Thank you.
Thank you, City Attorney. Here. And we'll move on to item number 5. And first we have a presentation by the retail coach. Go ahead.
Here we go. That should be better. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Hey, it's great to be with you. My name is Austin Farmer, Project Director with the Retail Coach. We're here for our quarterly project update. So we've been working with the community for a few years now on retail economic development. So really focusing on where there's opportunities to grow the retail base in the community and specifically to go out and actively recruit new retailers and new retail developers to the market. And so just want to give you an update on what our core focus has been and some of the progress and momentum that we've seen and just some key areas that we're focused on over the next quarter and really into next year. So first off, just ongoing work and progress to date. We've got a few areas we wanted to highlight of where we've been focusing our time and efforts, particularly on that retail recruitment. And so that first point there is we've looked at the Highway 111 corridor. So looked at really kind of the key retail corridors in town. So, focusing on I-10, Highway 111, downtown, some unique opportunities there. And we've come back, it's been about a year to year and a half since we really looked at gap analyses for those areas. We've had some really good retail wins and brought in some new retailers and some new opportunities. So we've gone back and refreshed our gap analyses and really our retailer match list to see who actually fits the vacancies in those retail corridors. And we do that with cell phone data and looking at what the demographic shifts look like, where there's new opportunities based on store spacing, which retailers are actually moving in the market, who's expanding, really kind of just updating that to say, okay, what are our best bets here? Who can we go out and see as a really good potential fit that's going to elevate those corridors? So we've gone through and really identified those and have started recruiting those different retailers, restaurants, developers. We actually expanded our recruitment for Highway 111 in downtown, specifically just as the community and the city is really focused on those specific plans for 111 and downtown, making sure that we're focused on the right initiatives that align with the vision and really focusing on some key prospects from a retail perspective, and particularly in certain categories as well. One that we hear a lot and that we know there's a ton of retail leakage in, people are leaving for, is full service dining. And so we're looking at some opportunities there, some entertainment opportunities as well. We're also aggressively recruiting more than 75 different retailers and restaurants. So we're actively going out to these potential prospects, staying in front of them, sending them updated retail sites, what's available in the community, really just staying on them, trying to get on their radar if we're not already. And then if we can, try to pull in the timeline of how long it would take them to actually come get into the market. So really trying to sell them on the market. We're also working to solidify more site visits with retailers. We have a few different restaurants that are interested in some specific sites in town. And then we have some retailers that are interested in some specific developments that we're trying to get them to the market for an on-the-ground site visit, just so we can help them kind of see that potential and have their brokers really focus on, okay, is this somewhere that we can actually see ourselves in this market? The other part of that is collaborating with property owners. I think there are some key developments in town that are really important that we get right. And so we've been working with those property owners, developers, really just trying to help where we can. So to be an additional asset to their leasing team, to make introductions to any of our retail contacts, whether that be brokers or corporate real estate teams, just doing what we can to collaborate and then be a resource that the city has funded to really help them find those potential prospects. And then meeting with those retailers at national and regional events. We were actually just talking about an event that we'll be at next week called the ICSC Western Conference in San Diego. So we're proactively meeting with those retailers, restaurants, brokers, really doing what we can to get in front of them and then hopefully get them into the market. I mentioned Highway 111 in downtown. So we have really expanded our focus in our recruitment in those two specific areas. The reasons for that primarily are to really prioritize those key retail leakage and opportunity areas to say, hey, what can we do to really bolster this corridor, specifically from the retail opportunity perspective, but also from a community development perspective to say, okay, what are residents looking for? What do they want to see? What can we really do to help make this a community-driven redevelopment? And I think specifically for Highway 111, downtown's coming along nicely. There's a lot of great things happening down there. I think that synergy is starting to build out. So we're really focused on 111 and some key opportunities there. I think the mall redevelopment is very important, making sure that we can find what fits and what's ultimately going to be best for the city and residents long term. The second part there is to really ensure that the strategy that we have for each of those corridors aligns with the growth that the city sees and your vision. And I think it's pertinent, especially as you're talking about the specific plan tonight for 111 and downtown, and really making sure that we're going out and supporting what that corridor plan and that vision really looks like, and then to take advantage of some of the enhancements that are in those corridor plans, whether that be streetscapes or new development or zoning changes, just making sure that all of that aligns together, and then accounting for those synergies with those new retailers and restaurants that have recently come into the market. I mentioned the meetings with prospects and potential retailers at industry events. We were actually out at ICSC Las Vegas in May and had a lot of really good face-to-face meetings with retailers and restaurants. Some of those major retailers and restaurants include Panera Bread, Dick's Sporting Goods, Trader Joe's, a lot of the tenants that we typically hear from residents that say, hey, we really like these brands. We'd like to see them in town. So we're making sure that when we can, we're meeting with them face to face and really presenting the opportunities and the available spaces there. The one that I mentioned that's actually next week is ICSC Western in San Diego. To date, we've got, I believe, 15 meetings set now with different retailers and brokers that represent retailers to sit down with them for 10, 15, 20 minutes, walk through a map of available sites, really talk about those key opportunities. And our goal there is just to stay on their radar, at least top of mind for them, and then be able to help them make a decision on the market. And then if they ultimately say, hey, it doesn't fit right now, to be able to say, okay, what do you need? How can the city help? How can we help? What would it take to get you here? Or if they say, we could see ourselves there in 2 to 3 years, hey, how do we make it a year? Is there something that we can do to bridge the gap? Is there anything proactive that we can be doing? So we have those meetings next week, and we'll be following up with the city team to ultimately debrief and say, hey, here's where we're seeing traction. Here's where we're not. What do those next steps look like? And then how do we incorporate that into some of the strategic planning that you're doing with, whether it's 111 downtown or just in general for community and economic development. So then that brings me to our focus and priorities for really the remainder of the year. So we're looking at third quarter, fourth quarter, really continued recruitment. So working through our existing pipeline, again, just to stay on their radars and try to pull those decisions in and reduce that timeline. I mentioned a couple of categories earlier. I think it's important for us to increase our focus on full service dining, particularly. I think there's a huge gap there, with some of the new restaurant opportunities coming into town. I think we're pretty good on quick serve restaurants and fast casual restaurants. The area we're lacking the most is full service dining. We've had a couple that have announced they're coming to the community and are actually starting that construction process. I think that's great. The ones that we have gotten are really good signals to say, hey, this market can support those types of next level full service restaurants, but we really need to enhance that presence. So really digging in on that. I made sure to put red italics on there, not fast food. We're not specifically targeting fast food. We'll see those opportunities. We'll continue to see those come to the market because it's really proven that there's opportunity there in the market, but we're really focused on those next level full service dining options. Family entertainment is another big one. That's something we hear often is, there's not anything for us to do with our family in town. So focusing on some key anchor opportunities there. Clothing and accessories is another one. So really focusing on places where people can buy certain types of brands, certain clothing and accessory items, really focused on that across men, women, children's clothing, and then tenants that we think will drive the highest and best use for the available sites. So things that aren't just easy and convenient to fill in existing spaces, but things that will actually drive, better quality of life as well. So that's where our focus has been. That the key work in areas of focus box there in blue, just wanted to highlight a couple of things. Do you have a question, Mayor Pro Tem? Okay. We've been staying in front of those prospects just again to turn those maybes and not yets into yeses. We're reaching out to new prospects. So we're not just focused on those 75. We're expanding that net as much as possible, and then pushing for site visits and trying to get people to the market so they can see it and touch it and feel it, and then engage with property owners and city staff as well. Next one there is that targeted recruitment, really focused on some key opportunities. I think we have opportunities right now with where the strategic planning is going, with where the conversations are going, to really make sure that we can get the right fits in for Highway 111 in downtown. I-10 is still an important priority for us, but I think it kind of helps develop itself. Most national tenants see that. They see the major interstate and the traffic, and it's a little bit easier of a sell. So we're really focused on optimizing 111 in downtown and then utilizing those corridor specific plans to make sure that we're really aligning where the vision is with where we're going on the recruitment side. And the work that we've done to date is site specific recruitment. So really focused on not just the market and not just the corridor, but actual sites. So for the mall redevelopment, hey, what could be a good anchor here? How can we make sure that we're really speaking to tenants in the best way possible about this site, not just the market as a whole, and then working through some of those property owners and developers to help them get in front of the right retailers. An example of that is we're assisting a hotel developer to target full service dining options for a couple of pad sites that they have in front of a hotel that's planned on 111, and really saying, okay, what's going to be best for not only who's staying at the hotel, but for the community in general, and how can we bring something that's going to serve that hotel and serve the rest of the community along with it. And then that last one there is that upcoming event, ICSC Western. We've got the meeting set up there. We've sent a couple of rounds of meeting requests. I believe by the time we get there, we'll probably have upwards of 20 meetings with different retailers and restaurants, key brokers that represent a handful of some of the major tenants that we're looking for. And then we'll coordinate with staff as well. I know Carl's going out there, so we're going to loop him into all those meetings as well. And then any connections that we can make with him or for him while we're out there, we'll do as well. But that's really our core focus. We're in that heavy recruitment phase. We want to make as many contacts as possible, but we also want to be laser focused on what actually fits and what's going to keep driving retail in the community. We're excited about the momentum we've had to date, though, and looking forward to just continuing to snowball and build on that momentum. Any questions on any of that? I know I went through that pretty quickly.
Oh, actually, thank you for that great presentation, because we always wonder how it's going, who you're talking to, and so on and so forth. And I can't walk out my front door anymore without somebody saying, bring a Trader Joe's. So it's really interesting.
Tell them we're working on it. We've talked to them 10 times.
It's like a cult following for Trader Joe's. I want nothing else. But one question I have, up in the north side, Red Mountain Group there off of 42, where the Home Depot Center is, there's 2 restaurants, fully fixturized restaurants that went out. And I've just not seen anything. And it's been a few years.
Yeah.
And so that's concerning to me. Do you have any information on that, or?
We do. We're working on a couple of tenants right now to try to potentially get to backfill in some of those spaces. Red Mountain's done a great job as well of being proactive and trying to bring people to the table. The reason that I think there's been such a delay there is because the full service dining, a lot of the dining category has done really well in COVID, but it's mostly been quick serve restaurants and fast casual. So basically anything with a drive-through or delivery has done pretty well. Full service has really seen the biggest delay in getting back to normal. So I think that's prolonged how long that space has been open. The other part is just it's a little bit harder to get new restaurants into some of that second generation space if it doesn't really fit the specs of what they typically go into. So it's great to have a kitchen and a grease trap, but sometimes that square footage is too large, too small, and the cost to get them in there is pretty tough. But I think if I were to say what I would say the main factor would probably be just the COVID recovery period for some of those full service options.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Not to use that as a cop out. I know.
But I know there's certain realities. It just when you year after year after year, it's got to be concerning for the people that own the property as well, right? Having that kind of vacancy for so long.
Yeah.
So
there are some great new full service additions that they're making at that center as well. Texas Roadhouse is a great example.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Councilmember Miller, do you have any questions?
No, I appreciate the presentation. It's great to hear of all the work that's being done, and I'm sure that we'll get some more bites of the apple from when you go down to San Diego. What is it that we can do to help you in any way as a council? I mean, obviously we have Carl, we have our city manager, we have all the other individuals that are helping you. Is there anything we can do to bring things forward that we can help you to be proactive in bringing some of these long awaited accessories, I guess you want to say, from retail to sit down restaurants?
This is a great question, Councilman. I think that the biggest thing you guys are already doing is just some of the forward thinking and planning that goes into that. I've had a lot of conversations with Carl and Kevin and the team about the 111 specific plan and downtown specific plan. Those things are the most important to us because you're laying the foundation, and it helps us to be able to have a concept that has zoning and has the city's investment in the development across the corridor. So those are really, I think, the most important kind of keystone things that you can be doing as a city. And, we have a great relationship with Carl and Kevin and Miguel now as well, and Brian. So, anything that a retailer is going to ask us for, or that we think the city might provide, they've already committed to us that, hey, we'll bring it to the table. We'll talk to the council to do whatever we can. So we're pretty confident that between those two, if we have those foundational pieces in place, that we should be able to have what we need at this point with most retailers.
I appreciate that. And anything we can bring to the table, our staff will do. We're very blessed by having a great staff and great public safety groups that are supporting us. And that's a lot of the issues that are happening in other cities, is that, they're not looking outside the box. The last other thing is that when you talk about the mall, and that's something we're going to be talking about here later, working with them, obviously we need, that's been a long time waiting, anything that they are looking at, that we can do to help with that, please let us know, because that's been a vital part of it, along with downtown, which has been long awaited, and downtown's moving a lot quicker than the mall has. But from signage to anything else that you think that we might be able to be a part of, please let the city manager and staff know, and hopefully they can bring it towards us and we can help in any way. Those are some vital areas that have long been awaited, and I look forward to them being into fruition and assets to our community instead of blights. So thank you very much for your presentation.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, for the record, Councilmember Ramos Hamid joined the meeting at 5:14.
Okay. Councilmember Ramos Hamid, do you have any questions?
No, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
All right. Victoria, any questions? Any requests?
No, I think it's amazing. I really would like to see the mall in Indio. It'd be cool to have stores there and be able to go and hang out there instead of going all the way to Palm Desert. So I think that would be cool.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, and I just wanted to say, we're really thankful to have you guys on our team. I did see the presentation from your coworker, Matthew, at Cal Cities a few weeks ago, and just a really great presentation on how you guys utilize the data there. How do you guys get community input to try to bring different restaurants into the neighborhoods? And, hearing you talk about all the issues that the data is bringing up, it's the same issues that we're hearing in our community, right? That the sit-down restaurants is a huge thing, underutilized buildings that have been empty for a long time that we're trying to fill in. So I think we're both on the same page as far as the community and your company on where we're going with Indio. And we have seen a lot of great advancements. During that presentation, I pulled up the document that we share with your company, and seeing all the new prospects and where all these companies are at different stages of planning or recruiting. And it's just really great to see that we're organized. We have, clear missions, clear objectives here, and we're moving forward in a good direction. So I just want to say thank you.
Oh, thank you. And I've got to admit, just objectively speaking, we work in a lot of cities in California, and India is one of our favorite, just because the communication is always clear and concise, and we have a game plan, and it's easy from our end to work with the city. So we really appreciate the partnership as well.
Oh, thank you. Any other questions for us?
I don't think so at this point.
No.
I'm excited to get out to ICSC next week, and I'm pretty sure there'll be some follow-up conversations from that hopefully will be as exciting as I think they will be.
Yeah, well, good luck out there. Any other questions? Everybody good? All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and move on to item 5.2, our proclamation for Hispanic Heritage Month. And I did just want to share a few comments on this first. We'd like to present this proclamation on behalf of the city, and we want to thank all those who are working to understand our heritage, to teach our heritage, and to support the expression and practices of our heritage. I have an interesting story about a family I know here in Indio. They carried the first name Juan for a long time, and because of discrimination that family saw, they changed that name, right? So the grandfather was Juan, the son, his son was named John, to avoid some of those issues, right? And after a while, his son actually named his son, the other guy's grandson, Juan again, so you kind of see that some of an erasure and a recovery of part of our heritage. And I think we see that in a lot of different ways in our community. And, many of us don't know our lineage because of the process of colonization. And a lot of our community members have gaps in our history, right? And so these are gaps that we're still trying to fill. And we're thankful for those who are working to fill those gaps. We have Desert Mirage leading the way in our community with an incredible ethnic studies program. where they have shown that students who learn their history through ethnic studies end up achieving higher test scores in math, science, and English. And so it creates a whole different relationship and a different level of trust between the teachers and the students when someone's there to teach you about your roots and how we got to where we are, right? And so we also recently had the Armenta family here at the CV Arts Center teaching courses on indigenous traditions here next door. And they taught dances, they taught about plant medicines, drumming, and art courses to try to rejuvenate that connection with our indigenous part of our heritage. And so we have many Hispanic-centered businesses here thriving very well here in our community. And they allow us to continue to celebrate our traditional ceremonies, eat our traditional foods, and learn about our history. And we appreciate them for being a big part of our community. As a city, we've made some strides in supporting our Hispanic community recently by providing translation services and increasing our Spanish communication with our residents. And truly, I think we're just getting started. We need to continue to learn about the heritage of our community members and listen to what the needs are in terms of barriers to our Hispanic community. We also need to fight for a broader ethnic studies program within our school district that teaches the Hispanic and indigenous perspectives of our history. So as always, we have a lot of work to do, but I want to thank our staff for the proclamation, and we hope to have the support of our community as we learn, as we teach, and as we celebrate our heritage. And would you like to join me down, take a picture?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
One, two. Wonderful. Thank you.
Very well said, yes. I'll just try to project. I couldn't have said it better.
Our heritage is so important to us. And sometimes as generations grow and evolve, we lose some of that. And I hate to see that in any way, in any culture. I certainly grew up in a very cultural family as well. And our heritage, our roots, everything that we keep is so important. And I'm so happy for all the Hispanic businesses. I work within them on our restaurants and our dress shops and whatnot that are here that continue that. And we hope to see more of that. So I thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem, for your words.
Thank you. Victoria?
Yeah, I think it's amazing that we're doing a proclamation for this, especially here in the city of Indio, because we have so many Hispanic businesses here. And it's really amazing to see it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. Thanks. All right, you're next. Oh, sorry. Next, we have a report from our Youth Advisory Council. We have our new Youth Advisory Council members out here. So welcome to the team. Go ahead.
Hi, so good afternoon, City Council members. My name is Victoria Tarriquez, and I was elected as the mayor for the Youth Advisory Council for the City of Indio this year. I am a senior at Xavier College Prep, and I am very excited for this year's Youth Advisory Council and for the upcoming events we have planned. We are hoping to have an even better year than last year and have so many new ideas. And we always invite suggestions and guidance from our city council members to help us grow. Before I go into our events, I would like to introduce this year's Youth Advisory City Council. YAC Mayor Pro Tem Frida Arriaga. She was at a cross-country meeting, so hoping it all goes good for her. Our YAC Treasurer, Stephanie De Jesus. She goes to Indio High School. Our YAC Secretary, Bianca Terriquez, she goes to Xavier College Prep. Our YAC Publicist, Mia Bella Cancino, she goes to Indio High School. Sophia Campbell, she goes to Cabrillo Point Academy. Kaylee Cisneros from Indio High School. Mia Garcia from Indio High School. Sorry, Shadow. Citlali Lucero from Shadow Hills High School. April Nunez from Indio High School. Talia Randoloff from Shadow Hills High School. Aramis Rivera from Indio High School. Daniela Rodriguez from Indio High School. And Viviana Tarriquez from Xavier College Prep. So we already got started on some of our activities, and last Friday, some of our members attended the Princess Party at the Desert Recreation Center. Also this past weekend, our members volunteered at the Find Food Break in Indio to help pass out food boxes. This year, we would like to do as much volunteering as we possibly can, more than last year, because we did so many things last year and it was a really great year. We look forward to this upcoming year and can't wait for the events in the future. And we would also like to thank CV Strategies for our blue polos that we are wearing right now. So thank you.
All right, thanks for the update. Councilmember Holmes, any message for our Youth Advisory Council?
Absolutely. Gosh, what a great council. Welcome to YAC. Welcome to the Indio Teen Center. What a great opportunity this will be. I am so proud of you, of everyone that is a part of the Youth Advisory Council. It will be a year that you will never forget. And for some of you, it will be a series of years. Be sure to access any of us as council and ask us questions, talk to us, take a tour with us. A day in the life of a council member. Please, we're here to serve, and that means serving you as well. Don't ever hesitate to connect with us.
Right. Any comments, Mr. Miller?
Oh, just congratulations and thank you for stepping up and leading the charge for our youth and giving us the guidance that you feel is needed from your perspective in our city. It's very much valued, and it's great to see so many of you that stepped up to the plate to help us make decisions for the city. So as Councilmember Holmes said, we're here as resources to you, and we look forward to many great things coming from your group.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Ramos Hamid.
I'd like to congratulate all of our new members and welcome them to the team. I don't know that they realize how much past teen councils have contributed to the growth of this city. Each one of the previous councils has left an impression on our community, and I look forward to working with this new council and all the new things that they're going to bring to us. So thank you for stepping up.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say, first of all, just thank you for your service to our city, for being here with us and helping us in our decision-making for our city. And I want to really encourage you to use your power here too. You know, on top of the volunteering, you always have the opportunity to voice your opinion on any decisions that we make here at the city. And so, you know, if there's any pressing issues that you guys see that we're going to make out here and you want to give your input, you're always welcome to, if you decide as a group what you want that opinion to be. You know, we definitely encourage that. Also, congratulations on coming back and also on being the mayor of the Youth Advisory Council. Really appreciate you coming back and serving our city again. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to item number 7, report on city council internal and external board commissions.
Do you want me to go first? Sure.
Yeah, sure.
So last month I had none, and this month I had 5 or 6. So I'll try to make them all succinct. I'll go over the first one was the East Valley Reclamation Authority that I sit on with Councilmember Glenn Miller. Really, at the end of the day, this is all about our recycled water project and the importance of water conservation and our ability to recycle. During that time, we executed an agreement with Todd Groundwater so that we could do a groundwater model, and that is looking at injection, the quality, how long it takes to get to the nearest well, and all the challenges involved with that process. Secondly, we talked about an agreement with Carollo Engineers to look at a recycled water master plan. We've been working on this for some time. And we're talking about how important that recycled water component is and what the process is for the coming years. Let's see, looking at a commercial food waste diversion program with everything, particularly AB 1383 in the works. So lots of things going on at the East Valley Reclamation Authority. Again, the importance of recycled water. The second meeting I attended was a Transportation Commission, and a couple of things of note. One has to do with the design and engineering services for the flooding and blow sand projects. Desert Hot Springs, Cathedral City, Palm Springs, when it's windy like we've had, they are not just inundated, they're covered with sand, and it prevents ingress and egress from their cities, and it creates all kinds of problems. So we are in the process, we executed an agreement to provide design, engineering, and environmental services for the Coachella Valley, Western Coachella Valley flooding and blow sand projects. Hopefully that process occurs quickly so that we can help these folks stay open and keep their roads open. That's always a concern of mine from a public safety perspective. The second thing is Avenue 48, the Van Buren Street and Dillon Road widening project. County is the lead on this. City of Coachella is going to split the local share, and we should be commencing construction on August 31st, 2023. Again, that'll be a significant change in how traffic flows and throughout that area. Sat in for Mayor Wayman Furman on the Homelessness Committee. And let me just hit through. I mean, that's something I could talk to for 2 hours. So let me just hit the salient points. So we know that Governor Newsom really just voted in the care court or approved the care court. And just a quick overview on what that means. There are a lot of folks out there with mental illness, severe and significant mental illness that we need to look at, consider, assist in every way possible. And sometimes these folks fall into the cracks. Years ago, we had behavioral health at the time. I think they were called state institutions that really helped meet the need, particularly of those with severe mental health issues. And at some point in time, many years ago, those dissolved, and we are left with so many people in our community that have these challenges. So it will be up to the community to look at the referral process. And these are for folks that have really the more advanced. This is not a mechanism that allows us to send somebody somewhere. It's a mechanism that allows us and encourages everyone to help with these folks in their lives. So from a referral, it goes to a clinical evaluation. And once they are in and being looked at from an evaluation, whether that has to do with medication, history, background, imbalances, then it goes into a care plan. There's has to be support and case management, and a significant amount of it once these people are in counseling, in whatever form of treatment there are. And there's a housing plan. We can't just treat folks. We can't help them if they don't have a place to live, a place to transition. So that's a significant part of that. And that's based on the Housing First model. Is this a simple and easy rollout? It's not, but it's a significant first step and something that we've needed to do for many years, which is essentially to deliver behavioral health services throughout all of our communities. And at the end of the day, I wrote something down that they said that made sense to me. It's based on evidence, which demonstrates that people can stabilize. Once we can get them on track, once we can help them with some of their behavioral health issues, that creates, and the housing issues, and that creates a stable environment that allows them to move on in the world and succeed. And so this is really designed to serve people with significant issues. And so I'm very pleased to see and to go through the steps. There's a lot more coming down. There's a lot of dollars out there that have been allocated and more coming to assist these folks. There's housing in every single one of our cities that needs to be built and put together. Again, that transitional housing is very important. The next is Let's see, where am I? Oh, the Coachella Valley Conservation Commission. My last two are probably two of my favorite here. So everybody knows about the bighorn sheep issue, particularly out in La Quinta. And you know, several years ago, that was kind of cute, but now there's lots of them and they're on the golf course, which means they're potentially getting hit or eating something poisonous, or they're in people's yards. And so a few years ago, there was to be a fence constructed. And what happened is, well, it didn't. There have been challenges with PGA West, just construction challenges, COVID, just a whole lot of things. And it's still not under construction. We're looking at Monday, the 19th of the next month for this construction to start. And the concern is that these sheep then are suffering. We're trying to provide a safe haven for them. And unfortunately, there are problems with them being poisoned or killed or hurt or injured because they're in the street. This should take about 18 months. So realistic 2 years. Happy to see that. We talked about the biological monitoring program, and I have so much to learn about all of this. And we talked about a specific lizard, and, you know, we all have lizards around our backyards, but there's a particular lizard that we're trying to preserve. And for everybody that says, really seriously, give me a break. You know what? There is a certain preservation that goes on in our community, in our native species, that we need to understand, be aware of, and preserve. And then we talked about the acquisition of a parcel in the Whitewater Floodplain Conservation Area. And somebody came up with an idea that says, in those areas, there are billboards. And if any of those acquired lands have billboards, shouldn't we collect some income? Well, I thought that was a very creative idea, and I think everybody else did. And legally, we aren't sure if that's feasible, but we are definitely going to look into it. We acquired 6 tax default parcels from Riverside County, Mission Creek, Highway 111 at I-10, the Dulce Palmas near Salt Creek, and the Avenue 66 at Highway 86. And again, trying to preserve our lands so that they are there for future generations and to be able to hike and explore and understand all the native species. And let's see. That's about it. And one of the ongoing issues that is a part of the conversation has to do with flood control. That just continues to be a challenge for everyone in this desert. And then the Coachella Valley Mountains Conservancy. Of note, I thought this was excellent. We approved some Prop 68 infrastructure grant to the Living Desert Zoo and Gardens for their conservation greenhouse project. And you might say, well, what is that? Well, what they're doing is it doubles the amount of plantings distributed to residents of disadvantaged communities. So these are drought-resistant plants that have been cared for, that have been grown very specifically, and it allows residents, and it's really the target of those that are in such a position as to not have those kinds of gardens or visibility into them. And so they are, again, distributed to residents of disadvantaged communities and giving them a little bit of direction, and that is an ongoing process. Let's see. Friends of the Desert Mountains, small habitat restoration project on existing conservation lands. It was $20,000. It's within the Santa Rosa and San Jacinto Mountains Conservation Area. And Mayor Pro Tem, that's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember Holmes. Ms. Ramos-Amit, do you have any updates?
I had no committee meetings this month. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Miller?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I do have a couple of committees that were active. One was East Valley Reclamation Authority, as Councilmember Holmes said. We did approve $455,000 worth of opportunities to go out to bid for the model survey for the injection. As the council member said, it's something important to us to be able to recycle that water and be able hopefully to utilize it and put it back into our aquifer instead of letting it go down through the storm channel. And then also a model survey when we're doing the master plan for all the recycled water. And that's something that's going to be important when we go to the CBWD or the state or the federal government to look for grants to be able to help pay for this. Because we're talking in excess of anywhere from $40 to $80 million to redo this recyclable plant. And so it's going to have to come with a lot of funding from either the feds or the state to be able to help utilize that water and take it out to existing properties that are large landscape areas like the golf course at Eagle Falls or our golf course at the lights. So great opportunities there, and it's doing some great work. And then also they're looking outside the box to take some of the recyclable waste from food and turn it into energy to help provide energy for their new processes that they're having there, so that they can become energy independent. So I thought that was a great opportunity for them to look at other things outside the box and look at the ways to save energy at the same time. ECAC, which is the IID energy part for our Eastern Coachella Valley. Good news is that the board from IID was going to go ahead and take $6 million from their reserve fund that they had to keep the rates down lower for our residents the last 4 months of people that are involved with IID energy. But the dollars that came in from usage because of the heat and everything lowered that down. So it's not going to be as much, and we'll be able to keep the prices down about another couple cents lower than what they anticipated for our residents. So that's a good opportunity there. And then they also are looking at some new equipment that they're being purchased up in the upper north part of the city and through the city of Coachella, where they're putting in some new transformers and also some more equipment to update it. So good investment back in our community. Wanted to thank Rudy Morales and the VFW, the American Legion Hall, Public Safety, Border Patrol, and everyone else that was there for the 9/11 remembrance we had out in front of City Hall. Hopefully we never forget. It was great to see the response from our community and everybody that was there. So thank everybody and our staff for being a part of that. And then the last is the League of California Cities. I think we all pretty much went to that conference, be able to network with our fellow council members and other opportunities for educational. I don't know how many of the seminars you guys went to, but there was some very informative seminars from everything from cannabis to energy to recycling that is able to attend. So great opportunity for the League of California Cities. And then the last thing, and I'll wait till Mayor Furman gets back, but I'd like to get an update on the Desert Recreation District negotiations and talking about where we're going to stand. I know that they came back with a bid for a little bit higher than what we're used to, but I think it's something we need to really look at. Our parks are a struggling part of our city. They need to be utilized more. They need to be taken care of more. I know the park I have on Burr Street is missing some canopies over the park equipment for the youth, and they're not able to use it. So I really do think we need to get into a process of looking at it. And if we have to, and we can't come to terms with our staff and their staff, then maybe it's time for 2 of the council members and 2 of their board members, along with our city manager and their general manager, to talk to see if we can come up with a way to see if there is an opportunity to move forward with that, because I think our parks are being underutilized and not as well maintained. So I'd like to see if we could maybe get that going and see if we can have an update on that shortly. And that's it, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Miller. Can we bring that back for a discussion item?
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Okay.
We'll schedule it.
Good. All right. Thank you. All right. And I have 3 things I wanted to bring up before I get to my to the other meetings that I had outside of the city council. One is that I've gotten more calls this month about illegal evictions within our community. I heard from one of our workers here at the downtown SAC Health Hospital. She helps patients who need social services. And so she says the biggest request she receives is for help in housing situations. So I want to request to bring back a discussion item so that we can provide funding to send a flyer to every home and apartment in our city, so that we can share some important information on housing laws and also share some important resources with all of our residents and landlords in the city. Second one is that I've gotten a recommendation from one of our community members to assign a staff person to Miles Park and South Jackson Park, which need a lot of help at the moment. This person would be in charge of overseeing landscaping maintenance, equipment maintenance, bathroom maintenance, and any other issues that present themselves at those 2 parks. I think it's a good idea, so I wanted to see if we could bring this back as a discussion item as well. The third one is that we used to have the mental health care services at the teen center, where our teen center kids received free services, and in turn, the counselors were able to use the teen center counselor spaces to see their own adolescent clients as well. And so I would like to see if we can work on bringing back that program to our teen center. So could I get support from our council in bringing back those 3 items? Yes, Mr. Miller?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay, thank you. And then getting to the meetings, earlier this month, I hosted a seminar with and Assemblymember Garcia, where we discussed water systems in the Coachella Valley. We invited elected officials and community leaders from around the Coachella Valley and discussed things like where our water comes from, how it's used, and other issues such as the Salton Sea and the drought affecting the Colorado River. We had some great speakers, including Secretary Crowfoot from the California Natural Resources Agency and Joaquin Esquivel, who is chair of the California State Water Board. I also had a meeting with the Coachella Valley Association of Governments Energy and Environment Committee. We had our elections and I was chosen as the new chair for that committee, and Linda Evans was chosen as the vice chair. So we'll be working together on the agendas for that committee going forward. We also discussed the PM10 street sweeping program, which is where we use street sweepers on some of the roads with the most traffic. What this does is collect the dirt and dust on these roads, which prevents it from being broken down into fine dust that can then pick up into the air and affect our health, the health of our residents. And a study that they presented did show that the program is having a positive effect on our PM10 levels, which will help our community members. We also discussed the Colorado River drought and how that may affect the future plans for the Salton Sea. The current discussions for future plans are looking at the sea-to-sea pipeline to the Sea of Cortez or continued mitigation, which would be somewhat water intensive. The Army Corps of Engineers is still looking to partner with the state to implement a long-term plan. If successful, the studies for this plan will take about 3 years, but it will also bring 65% of project funding from the federal government. So if that's successful, the federal government would be covering 65% of whatever the project costs are going forward at the Salton Sea. I was recently appointed to the Southern California Association of Governments Resiliency and Conservation Subcommittee. So I'll be representing the Coachella Valley as we discuss how the SoCal Region's Connect SoCal plan will address issues of resiliency to the increased issues of extreme weather that we are seeing now and will be seeing in the future. Topics that we will be covering include recycling, composting, evacuation plans, preserving topsoil, preserving wildlife corridors, and transportation congestion. Some initial concerns that were raised were the water crisis and also making sure that our policies that we make are taking into consideration the economic impacts on our communities, especially for our low-income communities who often drive further to work sites and are heavily impacted by increasing gas prices and vehicle costs. Earlier today, I also had a meeting with the Coachella Valley Economic Partnership. Our CVEP Economic Summit is scheduled for the morning of Halloween, and you're welcome to join us there. You can find registration information at cvep.com/summit. We had a presentation from College of the Desert regarding workplace internship programs. They have many services aimed at students getting experience in the workplace, including training for interviews, help with workplace attire, career counselors, and other services. Students can find more information on the COD Handshake website. Students can log in at app.joinhandshake.com. I also want to remind everyone that September is Hunger Awareness Month. I have a flyer here from Find Food Bank. So Find Food Bank is a nonprofit that works on a lot of these issues within our community. And so they're always taking volunteers and looking for donations. So please consider donating to them or signing up to volunteer. The link for volunteering is findfoodbank.org/volunteer. And with that, we'll move on to our next item. City manager reports. Yeah, there we go.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz. Just briefly, wanted to update the council. The last time staff updated council in regard to the low and moderate income housing fund, there was one affordable housing developer that was interested in working with the city on a development of a housing, low moderate income housing establishment. But since that time, the interest has increased. Now there are a number of developers that are interested in working with the city. So the city manager's office, as well, and working with the community development department, we'll be going over all these requests, and we'll be bringing something back for the council's consideration, probably in early November, maybe late October. That's the update.
Thank you, Mr. Rockwell. We'll go ahead and ask our Youth Advisory Council if they would like to be dismissed.
Yes, please.
Okay, but one question first. I see that for the second year in a row, it's all women on the Youth Advisory Council. So what are you doing to scare off all the guys?
Nothing, just woman power.
Nice. Well, thank you again for joining us.
Thank
and
you.
Congratulations to all of you. Welcome to the city, and thank you for your service. We'll see you next time. Thanks. All right, and we'll go ahead and move on to our consent calendar. We do have some public comments. We have first public comments on 9.8. Okay, let me call them up. First, we have Vanessa Rivera. And hold on just a second, just so people know what the item is. 9.8 is resolution number 10327, approving the renaming of Avenue 51 to Hagen Way between Madison Street and Monroe Street. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hello, Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz. My name is Vanessa and I'm a resident of Indio. I'm here to state my opposition to renaming part of Avenue 51 to Hagen Way. According to the staff report, part of the reason for the name change is to, quote, honor the family name that is behind the ownership of the renowned venue site, quote, that hosts the Coachella and Stagecoach festivals. But it's these festivals, along with some City of Indio policy, that has led to locals like me being priced out of the kind of neighborhood I grew up in. I live with my parents currently, and one house in our ungated neighborhood was recently sold at over $800,000, and another is currently listed at over $900,000. There's an obvious housing crisis connected to the festivals. Many Indio houses for sale aren't marketed to local residents anymore. They're advertised as ready for short-term rentals for the festivals and not for permanent residents. This proposal to change the street name feels like a disconnect to this crisis. With that, I ask that you please do not approve this proposed government-funded project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rivera. We have another speaker on this item, Jonathan Becerra.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. I'll be very brief. I want to echo the sentiments of community member Vanessa Rivera. I don't think this is a good use of city time or monies or even a good idea given the housing crisis we're in right now. Very specifically, I'm obviously running for city council, but I'm out in the streets knocking on doors, and it is number 2 or number 1 on people's minds that they are facing a housing crisis right now, that they very much blame the Coachella houses, the Airbnb houses. So very clear disconnect here. I think it's very much echoing what I'm hearing on the ground, this kind of movement. So I really encourage just tabling this, just focus on the housing crisis. We don't really need to worry about promoting landowners right now who just happen to be able to host this. They're getting paid lots of money. I'm sure they're fine with that. They don't need this extra pieces that we're going to be giving up to them. Streets are important. What we name our streets are important. It reflects our culture, our community as a whole, and it should be consistent that way. So that's all I'll say to that. Mostly I'll add just, because I don't want to wait for the general public comment. I'm also hearing on the ground about some traffic concerns. I can't. Okay, well then I'll leave it there and thank you for the time.
Thank you. We have another public comment for 9.11. Is that right?
Yes, we do. Tab Johnson.
And sorry, let me read item number 9.11 so our crowd here knows what we're talking about. This is the second reading of ordinance number 1782, repealing chapter 150, billboards and signs, and chapter 157, zoning regulations of title 15, land usage of the Indio Municipal Code, and adopting the City of Indio Unified Development Code as the signage and zoning regulations for the City of Indio, and repealing the current citywide zoning map and adopting a new citywide zoning map. Do we have their speaker?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, thank you. You have 3 minutes, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Tab Johnson. I represent Rich Development Company. We are the owners of the shopping center at Highway 111 and Monroe, the Food for Less Center. And we were somewhat caught by surprise on the rezone general plan. I'm not sure exactly how that happened, but we didn't realize this was happening for a while. And I appreciate Kevin Snyder's taking the time the last couple of days to try to walk me through the process and what's happened and where we're going. And he's really helped me a lot understanding exactly what we're trying to do here. My only concern with this is that we're not approving the specific plan overlay prior to this zoning change becoming law. And the larger reason behind that is because I'm concerned about the prohibition of drive-through uses in the MT zone. And with what we've all gone through in the last couple of years and understand that both customers and employees have fared very well with safe distance practices in terms of getting their food and interacting with customers and employees, it would seem a little short-sighted to just do an out-and-out prohibition of drive-through restaurants or banks in that zone. And I would ask that maybe the council reconsider that to allow those uses to be potentially allowed through the CUP process. That was, from our ownership's perspective, the concern with those zoning use restrictions. And again, as long as the overlay is going to be allowed and accepted, then I think the other challenges that MT zone bring about for a shopping center on two main arterials, we can overcome those. But without this overlay, we're really putting handcuffs on the development in the long term, at least any type of redevelopment of that center. Those are our comments, and we hope that you can look at those and maybe amend somehow to allow drive-throughs in the MT zone to be allowed under a CUP application. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Johnson. I would like to pull both those items, 9.8 and 9.11. Go ahead.
Mayor Pro Tem, we have one more on Zoom. Annalisa Vargas, are you available?
Oh, yes, I'm here.
All right, and which item would you like to comment on?
It was on 9.8.
9.8. Okay, thank you. Go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Oh, yes, thank you. I'm also an Indio resident, Annalisa Vargas, and I also just, the same sentiment as Vanessa Rivera and Jonathan Becerra. I too am, in the process of looking for a home and purchasing a home, and I have not been able to find anything that's like affordable, and it's very difficult when you don't have any other options, and then rents are very high as well. And yeah, so I just wanted to say that I hope that the city can do everything they can to help the community and our families with the housing crisis. And I also just want to urge the city council to vote no on this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vargas. Any other comments? Ms. Castillo?
There are none.
None? Okay. I'll go ahead and pull 9.8 and 9.11. And then is there any other items we'd like to pull? Mr. Miller? No? Everybody good? So we go ahead and do a vote on entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar with the exception of 9.8 and 9.11.
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay,
I'll
we have a
second that motion.
Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Holmes?
Aye.
Councilmember Miller?
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos Amit? I believe that was an aye on her part.
Yes.
And Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Then we'll go ahead and talk about 9.8 first.
Yeah, I'd like to call up Tim Wassel to just do a brief overview of the request.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. Just a brief overview of this item 9.8. The request was received to rename Avenue 51 to Hagen Way. It's a half a mile west of Monroe Street. We were proactive, reached out to the property owners that would be impacted by the name change, and they were all in support of this action. So I can answer any questions you may have.
Any comments?
I do
Ms.
not.
Holmes?
No.
Mr. Miller, any comments?
No, not any comments on that. Thank you.
Ms. Ramos Amid?
I have no additional comments.
Oh, sorry, you're breaking up there a bit.
I have no additional
No additional comments? Okay, thank you. You know, I did have somewhat of a concern there, a bit different than the residents mentioned. You know, with the housing, I feel like it's a bit disconnected. But the concern that I have is, you know, we're renaming this it's a community member, right, that's invested a lot into our community. But on the other hand, we don't have a Martin Luther King Boulevard. We don't have a Cesar Chavez Street. There's a lot of very important community figures that we've failed to name in these streets. And I just think it's a different priority than I'm comfortable with. You know, I think, you know, we still have streets named after people who own slaves, right? And so to me, the priority would be changing those names first and maybe including some of those civil rights leaders or other important community leaders, even, you know, figures that are important to our Native history here, Kauai history, and focusing on those kind of things as a priority for renaming streets. That's just my sentiment. You know, I know my council members might disagree, so I'll go ahead and bring that up for a vote. Or if you have any additional comments, go ahead.
I just, I support 9.8, but I agree. I think we don't just take that information. I think we need to consider it in the future. I agree with you. And I understand where you're coming from. I think my 9.8 to me is a community member that has brought a lot to the city, to the sleepy town that had a lot of blighted areas, who first brought in the polo matches, who has made a beyond significant investment in our mall, who brought the concerts, which carry with it the good, the bad, and the ugly. But at the end of the day, they have brought our city into an area, into being able to have restaurants, into some economic vitality that we never had before. And I support 9.8 very much, but let's keep the dialogue open and going on some of the suggestions for naming the streets in the name of people that have had a greater impact in our community on a broader worldwide scale.
Okay, thank you.
We have a
Mr.
policy
Miller?
for naming.
Is that Lupe?
Yeah, I was just going to say we have a policy for naming streets and buildings that the Community Service Commission oversees. But Avenue 51 is not a public street. That was abandoned many years ago. It's part of the Polo Grounds.
Okay. Mr. Miller, any comments?
Yeah, very true. I think Lupe said it right. It's not one of our streets. It's been put aside, and it's being renamed in the name of an individual that owns that area, and also at the same time has brought in international recognition to this city. And it was asked by his son to rename it, and I think it's appropriate. I understand where you're coming from too, Mayor Pro Tem, on looking at streets, and that's something that we can look at if you would like to move forward with that, or some of the other council members would. I'm all in favor of that. If we can look at where we go. This is a separate issue, though. This is something that's been asked to be renamed, and I support it, and I'll make the motion to move forward with 9.8.
Okay, I have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second from Councilmember Holmes. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Holmes.
Aye.
Councilmember Miller.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos Amid.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz.
Nay, and the resolution passes 3-1. Thanks. And then can we have a presentation on 9.11, please?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of City Council, Kevin Snyder, your Director of Community Development. I actually, as Mr. Johnson noted, we did have a conversation the last few days, and I want to thank Mr. Johnson. He actually pointed out an oversight on our part. As Mr. Johnson pointed out, if the council does take action later on the agenda on the Highway 111 corridor specific plan, drive-through oriented land uses will be allowed on a limited basis. The zoning code inadvertently had a prohibited designation for them in the Midtown zoning designation. That actually should be a conditional use permit. The ordinance that you're conducting the second reading on does grant the authority to my position to make corrections. And if the council is comfortable with that, we would correct that as part of the production of the final zoning document. So I do appreciate Mr. Johnson pointing that out. The large document, sometimes you miss things, and appreciate his consideration and his pointing that out.
Thank you. Any comments?
Yes, Mr. Snyder, I thought in the deliberations, we moved in the direction of prohibiting drive-throughs on the 111 corridor. That's where the conversation ended up with the council.
Councilmember, I don't have a specific memory of that, but you will have that opportunity later in the agenda on the Highway 11 corridor specific plan, where there is a section of that plan that does talk about potential allowances of what we're calling limited land uses, in recognition that there are the plan has a long-term horizon and the opportunity for certain land uses to be permitted on a limited basis throughout the corridor could be considered. So that is something on the Highway 11 corridor specific plan, which if adopted becomes the zoning document for the corridor. I don't have a specific memory, and I apologize on any direct consideration of this as part of the zoning regulations that are considered under this ordinance, but you will have that opportunity to provide your council direction on agenda item 11.4 and identify whether or not the council wants to allow any drive-through oriented uses or other auto-oriented uses such as car washes, for example.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any other comments? No, Mr. Miller?
Yeah, if I could, Kevin, a couple things. First off, on the drive-throughs, when you're talking about that in the corridors and that, you know, they've talked about the mall and this gentleman's talking about the property right across from it. But, you know, if In-N-Out Burger was to move, would that be prohibited under this if we were to do it in this corridor? Or would they be able to do a CUP, or because they're existing, would they be able to have a drive-through? Because a lot of the new ones, including like Panera Bread, if they were to go along Highway 111 corridor, they're only looking at ones that have drive-throughs. And I'm sure Carl or you know that they're not looking, they're not interested in just sit down anymore. They want to have a drive-through to be able to provide it. And that's one of the reasons they're moving in La Quinta, is because they're going from a regular one to a drive-through.
Yes, council member. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a convoluted response, and I apologize, but it's dependent on what you do later in the agenda. 11.4 would create new zoning regulations specifically for the Highway 111 corridor, both sides of the corridor, a quarter mile on each side from Indio Boulevard to Jefferson Street. This particular ordinance number 1782, is for the citywide zoning regulations. And in absence of that Highway 111 corridor specific plan, these zoning regulations would apply. And to your point, council member, we would agree that there is market realities that many communities, not just Indio, are facing, and that many businesses that provide the service you're describing do desire that. In the zoning regulations, however, in recognition of the council and the general plan that you adopted in September 2019 does push for higher quality building and site design, we do have specific standards for drive-throughs that focus on integration of the drive-through features into the building, enhanced landscaping, basically steps to de-emphasize the drive-through component of that. Still functional, of course, but less visible. So in the absence of taking action later in the agenda, then this ordinance would apply in the Midtown. And again, as I noted, it was an error on staff's part that should have been changed from prohibited to conditional use permit. And that was something that we missed.
Just wanted to make sure.
It wasn't an error on staff's part. It was the council decision. And there's a specific reason why we addressed the corridor separate from the city. If drive-through restaurants want to come into our city, they have plenty of areas to go into. The Highway 111 is already congested with too many drive-throughs and too many curb cuts. So it wasn't a mistake on staff part. Council made the decision that we do not want to have drive-throughs in that corridor.
Well, we can discuss that for 11.4. We do have the opportunity to change 11.4 if we would wish to. I think the conditional use is still appropriate. Anything that would come in with the drive-through would still need to be approved by, would that be by the council or the planning commission?
You have delegated that authority for conditional use permits to the planning commission.
Okay, yeah, and I'm still fine with that. I don't recall there being a consensus here to ban them completely from our council, but if our council wishes to do that, we could still do that in item 11.4.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And then just one last thing, Kevin, on the signs that we're talking about in the sign ordinance. And I know there was some concerns from some of the developers along the highway 111, I-10 corridors on some of the signs and the heights, because we've lowered them down to some of the levels of where the developments are higher and lower along the freeway as it goes up and down. Will you be able to, and also like the mall, where will you be able to do a conditional use permit and be able to adjust those as needed with this ordinance?
So the ordinance provides two opportunities to do adjustments. One's an administrative variance, which is done at the director level. That's for up to 20% of a numerical standard. So depending on what the height variation they're asking for. The other is a variance request, which is a public hearing item before the planning commission. And that would be considered, or could be considered at the same time that they're proposing any other development, so that they could have that considered either independently or as part of a comprehensive entitlement application. You are correct, Councilmember, however, that the signage regulations contained in this ordinance do slightly adjust heights for freeway-oriented signs down. Under current regulations, you could have upwards of 80 feet in terms of height of signs, and based on current sign regulations, the number of allowed size was depending on the lineal foot of frontage. So if you had 1,000 feet of lineal frontage, you could have upwards of 3 80-foot tall signs along the freeway. So we did work to try to provide the business opportunity for visibility and marketing, but also offered perhaps a more nuanced or reasoned set of sign regulations that also balanced the visual aesthetics of the community and making sure it wasn't overpopulated with too much signage.
But they will be able to administratively do it if they need a variance because of circumstances.
Administratively or by public hearing, yes.
Yeah, that's all I need to know. Thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure that that was part of this. And I thought it was, but I wanted to get it from you. Thank you.
Right. With that, I'll entertain a motion. Or any comments?
No, I don't have any comments. I'm trying to figure out how to make the motion on this, given the discussion that we just had, but essentially it's staying the same because any changes or any evolution, any comments we have are going to go over to 11.4, correct?
And Mr. Snyder has the authority to change that to
right.
The ordinance allows me to make corrective errors, corrections to errors, and this would be considered an error if the council takes action.
Okay, so I'll make a motion. Our second reading of ordinance number 1782, repealing chapter 150 billboards and signs and chapter 159 zoning regulations of title 15 land usage of the Indio municipal code and adopting the city of Indio unified development code as a signage and zoning regulations for the city of Indio and repealing the current citywide zoning map and adopting a new citywide zoning map.
Right. We have a motion from Member Holmes. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
I have a second from Councilmember Miller. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Holmes.
Aye.
Councilmember Miller.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos Hamid.
Nay.
And Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Right. Thank you. And we'll go ahead and move on to our administrative items. We have 10.1. And we have who's presenting? Mr. Snyder.
I apologize in advance because I'm pretty much going to be up here most of the rest of the evening. Sorry. So Mayor Pro Tem, members of City Council, again, Kevin Snyder, Director of Community Development. This item is simply a procedural item. Recently, our City Clerk's office discovered that unfortunately the second reading publication publication of the second reading of ordinance number 1779 was not conducted. And based on advice of our city attorney, we are bringing this back for first reading action. No changes to the ordinance itself, no substantive changes. We're literally just reintroducing it, asking council to conduct the first reading action, and then we will come back on October 5th for second reading, and we will work with the city clerk's office to make sure that these are appropriately published. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Also, city attorney can also provide any commentary regarding any statutory questions around this action.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from our council? No questions here. Mr. Miller, everybody's good? All right, I'll entertain a motion. No motion. Mr. Miller, are you working on finding the page or? Yes, he is.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, yeah, this is very slow today for some reason. I would like to make a recommendation to waive full reading and reintroduce ordinance number 1779, amending chapter 159 zoning regulations of the Indio Municipal Code to allow cannabis storefront retail and cannabis non-storefront retail businesses in certain areas of the city. Introduce the reintroduction ordinance by the title only and request the city clerk to read the title.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Miller. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Councilmember Holmes. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Holmes.
Aye.
Councilmember Miller.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos Hamid.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz.
Aye.
Motion carries. And for the record, I will read ordinance number 1779, an ordinance of the City of Indio amending Chapter 159 zoning regulations of the Indio Municipal Code to allow cannabis storefront retailer and cannabis non-storefront retail businesses in commercial land use districts except for the neighborhood commercial zone, mixed use land use districts, and on properties regulated by a specific plan or project master plan that permit commercial land uses, excluding any properties designated as neighborhood commercial, amending the subchapter entitled Cannabis Activity 159.565 exec, and making a determination that the ordinance is exempt from review under CEQA pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15061 8 and 3.
Thank you, City Clerk. We'll move on to item number 10.2, reintroduction of ordinance number 1780. Mr. Kevin Snyder.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Again, Kevin Snyder, Director of Community Development. Similar to the last agenda item, this is a reintroduction of ordinance number 1780, previously approved by the City Council. As I noted for the previous item, the City Clerk's Office did make a recent discovery that the second reading was not published in accordance with state and local regulations, and therefore we're asking the Council simply to reintroduce, conduct the first reading action, and we will come back again on October 5th for the second reading. And this is a procedural item. Again, myself and or the city attorney are happy to answer any questions the council might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Any questions?
Nope.
Everybody's okay. I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, I've got it this time. Waive full reading of reintroduced ordinance number 1780, adding a new chapter 123 to title 11 of the Indio Municipal Code to regulate and permit commercial cannabis activities in the city. Introduce the reintroduced ordinance by title only and request the city clerk to read the title.
I'll second that motion.
Second. We have a second from Councilmember Miller and the initial motion from Councilmember Holmes. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Holmes.
Aye.
Councilmember Miller.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos Hamid.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz.
Aye.
Motion carries. And now for the record, reading ordinance number 1780, an ordinance of the City of Indio adding a new chapter 123 entitled Cannabis Business Activities to Title 11 Business Regulations of the Indio Municipal Code to regulate commercial cannabis uses in the city.
Thank you, City Clerk. And we'll move on to item 11.1, substantial amendment to fiscal year 2021-2022 annual action plan. Mr. Kevin Snyder.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Again, Kevin Snyder, Director of Community Development. At this time, I'd like to invite Yanel Ramirez, Housing Management Analyst, to come forward and provide the council with a staff report prior to the public hearing. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Yanel Ramirez, Management Analyst. We are holding this public hearing tonight to give the council and the public an opportunity to comment on a substantial amendment to the fiscal year 21-22 annual action plan to reprogram unspent CDBG coronavirus funds. On June 3rd, 2020, Council accepted the use of CDBG coronavirus funds to help prevent, prepare, and/or mitigate coronavirus-related impacts and funded the listed agencies. Out of the 5 funded agencies, Inland Fair Housing Mediation Board and Inland County's Legal Services did not spend their entire allocation of CDBG coronavirus funds during their funding contract term, which ended June 30th, 2022. This resulted in approximately 155,000 unspent funds, in which are now available to be reprogrammed. Because of the amount, HUD required us to go through a substantial amendment process, which includes conducting this public hearing and sharing this information with the public. Here are the 3 proposed activities and levels of funding in which will help expand their level of services that they're currently providing. With that, council, staff is recommending to approve the reprogramming of unspent CDBG coronavirus funds in the amount of $155,070.83 to the activities that were previously presented to you.
Thank you for the presentation. Do we have any questions from council?
Could some or any of these funds be used for what we are considering at the next meeting to find a way to get the word out to all the tenants and so on and so forth that are struggling, that are being illegally evicted? Is there?
You know what? I actually initially asked the question because of these funds, and I try to allocate some of these funds to go to that. Effort, but because it's CDBG funding, it could only go to certain neighborhoods, and because it's COVID funding, it can only be used for COVID related items. So we won't be able to use those funds for that effort. Any other questions?
I do not.
No. Mr. Miller, any questions? You're okay with the 3 organizations we're funding?
Yeah.
All right. Ms. Ramos-Amit?
I'm okay.
We're okay. I think we're all okay here. I'll go ahead and entertain a motion. Sorry, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing at 6:26. Do we have any public comments?
There are none.
None? Okay. Go ahead and close the public hearing and I'll entertain a motion.
Let's see. Gosh, hang on a minute.
I can do it if you need, Elaine.
All right, jump right in.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve substantial amendments to the fiscal year 2021-2022 annual action plan in order to reprogram $155,070.83 in unspent community development block grant coronavirus round 1 CB1 funds and fund the Coachella Valley Rescue Mission, Martha's Village and Kitchen, and a Fine Food Bank to provide services to individuals and households in Indio 2, to authorize the city manager to amend the existing subrequisite funding agreements with the Coachella Valley Rescue Mission, Martha's Village and Kitchen and Find. And 3, direct the finance department to make the necessary budget adjustments as reflected in the financial summary of the report.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Miller. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second from Councilmember Holmes. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Holmes.
Aye.
Councilmember Miller.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos Hamid. Councilmember Ramos Hamid.
Aye.
And Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 11.2, first reading of ordinance number 1783. Miguel Ramirez Cornejo.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and members of the council. I am also a substitute for Carl Morgan. I am the Economic Development Manager, and tonight for public hearing, we will have the development agreement with HCL Indio and the City of Indio. So a little bit of background, the Planning Commission and City Council previously reviewed a joint study session with the plans to revitalize and re-tenant the former Indio Fashion Mall and renamed it to the Indio Grand Marketplace. These renovations are scheduled to begin this fall. The City Council approved a deposition and development agreement, DDA, on July 20th of 2022 with HCL Indio Land Development Company, LLC, that allows for the sale of city-owned properties totaling 15.35 acres. The DDA is the land conveyance document. These properties are located directly south of the existing mall property, and the approved DDA contains the schedule of performance and scope of development, as well as the terms of conditions for the sale and development of that property. It also requires that the property close escrow on or before December 24th of 2022. And here is a map of the subject property, and it contains those sections 1 through 5. And now we're moving on to the development agreement. A separate action and agreement is needed in the form of a development agreement in order to effectuate, as a condition of project approval, the design and construction of off-site street improvements and a park. The DA requires a developer to design and construct a 3.69 acre park and community gathering space and street improvements to Monroe, John Nobles, and Rubidoux. The Planning Commission recommended approval of the development agreement on August 24th, 2022. And here's an outline of the proposed park and community gathering area. And the recommendation to adopt ordinance number 1783, approving the development agreement between the City of Indio and HCL Indio Land Development, LLC, and finding said adoption is exempt from further environmental review pursuant to the provisions of Section 15004 of the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA guidelines. And I'm here to answer any questions if you have any.
All right, I'll go ahead and do. Vanessa, you want us to open the public hearing? Sure. Okay, we'll open the public hearing. Do we have any public comments? Mr. Al Mesa? Go ahead.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm just been having some conversation with the mayor last night, Furman. He called me from Washington and he wanted to have some of the ideas what happened with the Indio Fashion Mall 30 years ago. And we've been talking about it. And I figure, well, my figure was this. You know, we argue the Indio Fashion Mall for the last 32 years. And on top of that, including all the damage that this caused to the whole city and all the neighborhood, we have a lot of promises for the people in that area. And, you know, the money that we're selling the property right now to the developer, that money comes from redevelopment and taxpayers' money when we buy the properties. So we were wondering, the promises that they made for the neighborhood right in back of where the Indio Factual Mall was, they never keep. We never done nothing for the neighborhood. The neighborhood is really down tubes. And we don't have many people left. We have 3 people now, 90 to 97 years old. One of them is in the hospital. And, it never come to us to do anything for the thing. And I know that you're too young. You weren't here home, and Miller wasn't here in that time. Lupe was real young. And right, Lupe? And then a lot of things happened. It's why Furman was talking to me last night. We talked for about an hour and a half and we were wondering, out of that money, are we putting money away? We're going to do something for the neighborhood. We have people, we have houses that need redevelopment, because actually that money belongs to redevelopment, to the Palm Date Redevelopment Agency. Doesn't belong to the city. It's where the money comes from 32 years ago. So I was wondering that money, we were wondering some of that money going to be used to actually redevelop the Palm Day area, So before we make any decisions or anything else, I figure we got to put it, we don't want to have any more problems or any arguments about it. And after I talking to the attorney this morning for about 2 hours, we can have a lot of problems. We can go and have make a lot of problems for it. So think about it before you guys make decisions and leave everybody out. Think what's going on. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Mesa. Would you like to address any of those concerns? We go.
Kevin Snyder will address those.
Mayor Pro Tem, members of City Council, again, Kevin Snyder, Director of Community Development. So a couple of responses to the concerns raised. First, as the council is aware, part of the project of the redevelopment it's a total of 19.05 acres. 15.35 is being conveyed to the developer. The remaining acreage will be developed into a public park. And that was a discussion that started a number of years ago with community members, and that commitment for a public space in the development is being brought forward. So that is something that certainly, as was noted, a number of staff weren't present, but nevertheless, we do have the goal to honor that commitment that was previously made. Regarding the neighborhood itself, there have been discussions about working with the neighbors to make improvements to the neighborhood. This property does fall into a CDBG eligible area. And so we will be working with the city manager to determine what kind of projects might be eligible for that area, and then be coming to council to discuss that with you, and then ultimately obviously engaging with the community as well. So there are discussions internally about working with the community. We understand and we respect and realize the importance of honoring the community to the south, and making sure that as the area behind the mall revitalizes, that the neighborhood south of that revitalized area also revitalizes. So we are looking at various options. Again, we will have conversations with the community, and then also obviously conversations with City Council.
Thank you. Anything to add? Good. No?
No.
You okay there? All right. Any other public comments? We have one more.
Good evening, Council. My name is
Good evening. Oh, there we go.
Live on the 4600 block of Basie Street and been there 59 years. I want to echo what Pedro Mesa had to say. And I keep hearing about a park. We have a park already in the neighborhood, and right now you mentioned about working with the community and the residents. I was very instrumental in the park we have now, the existing park. And was there when the mall, when they went in with eminent domain to demolish homes. There's a lot of history there. I know that the planning commission approved a while back some items here regarding with the mall. Anyway, What I'm here to say is, you all need to really just take your time and really look at this really good. Mr. Snyder, I look forward to seeing you again and sitting down with you and talking with you. I've worked with in the past with the administration here at the City of Indio, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments?
There are none.
Yeah. Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Do you have any comments from the council?
Acknowledged and heard. I was sitting on some of these committees first with previous council member Troy Strange in the John Noble's neighborhood at the senior center. The history of Noble Ranch and the history that everything that occurred is very important to us here in the city of Indio, memorializing that, ensuring the quality which exists at the very highest level in that area is of utmost importance to us. So I as far as I'm concerned, and I think the entire council, I hear you, I understand, and I have no doubt that this will be a very quality project that will support the John Noble's neighborhood as well as memorialize it.
I'm referring to Desert Gardens, not John Noble's neighborhood. The Desert Gardens.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Mr. Miller, do we have any comments?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure what the conversation was between Mr. Meza and Mayor Furman and our city attorney. So I'm a little at odds with what it might be. I understand where they're coming from. I've had many conversations with Mr. Meza and others about the John Nobles area and what happened there. So, maybe later on they can enlighten us on what that is that they're looking and seeking to get. City attorney, if you want to jump in, please do. But I'm trying to figure out what they're asking us in terms of that.
Councilmember, I could maybe correct a misconception. I believe the speaker was talking about speaking with his own attorney, not with the city attorney's office.
Okay.
We did not have conversations with him before today.
Thank you. Okay, yeah. So I'm not sure what the conversation was. I understand where they're coming from, and I know there's been lots of discussion over the last 25 years about trying to get that mall back into what it was supposed to be and taking of those properties. So Lupe might be able to shed a little more light on this, and I look forward to hearing any other conversations that was had, but I'm not privy to anything. So thank you.
Ms. Ramos Amit, would you like to give any comments?
No, not at this time. I think that we have had conversation over the past decades, and it's time to move forward and everyone can be proud of. So I'd like to start entity with this project.
Thank you, Councilmember Amit. We got most of your message there. You're breaking up a little bit. I have some comments. We did want to include some discussion on the history of this property. There's a lot of horrible things that happen here with the displacement of a lot of Black families here through eminent domain on behalf of the city. And initially I had taken the position. That this is city land zoned for housing, and during the housing crisis, it should be used for affordable housing, for housing options for our residents. Unfortunately, I wasn't able. This is a democratic process. I wasn't able to get that by, and seeing as a lot of our community does want the redevelopment of this to happen, right? And it was a huge thing that we heard as we canvassed our communities. It was that this project needs to go forward. We've been waiting for decades and decades for investment into this property, and this is an opportunity that we have. And I understand the history of it, and it's very unfortunate. And I can tell you, I've actually seen what happened in Los Angeles with the Crenshaw Mall, right? When that was redeveloped, and you saw an increase in displacement of Black community there, and we're also aware of that. And I'm very, I'm pushing for a lot of efforts on that side of things to make sure that we're not displacing any more residents than we've already displaced in these neighborhoods. And so we're going to do it. I am supporting this project, but I am also promising that we're going to keep the fight going for affordable housing to prevent displacement from our residents in this area, and doing whatever we can to help these families and to make sure no one else is displaced because of this project. And so with that, I also have a message from, no, sorry. Okay.
I just wanted, Mayor Furman had his video. Is there a clip?
No, yeah. Okay, any other comments from our council members?
I completely for the.
Step up to the podium.
Do you want to come up to the microphone?
You need to come up to the podium.
Sorry, hold on just a second. Sorry, Vanessa. Yes, we'll reopen the public hearing at 6:43. Go ahead, Mr. Mason.
I completely for the Indio Factory Mall. I want to see it done before I die. It's been 35 years. They passed me through hell with the Indio Factory Mall because, I was one of the biggest property owners there in the back of the Indio Factory Mall. They did everything. They made my life hell for 3 years. And they did so many things to me, to try to get me out of there until they burned the place down. And they can say whatever you want, but the place was burned down. And, so yes, I want to see the mall down before I die. I'm going to pray for it. But I want to see justice for some of the people in the back too.
Definitely.
I grew up with them. Yeah, like you.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
Thank you.
I'm definitely with you on that, Mr. Mesa. Thank you. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing at 6:44. Entertain any other comments from our council.
Yeah, I'll have a motion.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'd like to approve ordinance number 1783, a development agreement between the City of Indio and HCL Indio Land Development LLC, and finding said adoption is exempt from further environmental review pursuant to the provisions of section 15004 of the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA guidelines.
We have a motion for Holmes. We have a second from Councilmember Miller. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Holmes.
Aye.
Councilmember Miller.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos Amit.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz.
Aye.
Motion carries. And now for the record, reading ordinance 1783, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Indio, California, approving a development agreement between the City of Indio and HCL Indio Land Development LLC for the development of approximately 19.04 acres of city-owned property located south of the Indio Grand Marketplace, formerly known as the Indio Fashion Mall, and generally located west of Monroe Street, east of Rubidoux Street, and north of John Nobles Avenue, and finding said adoption is exempt from further environmental review pursuant to the provisions of section 15004 of the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA guidelines.
Thank you, City Clerk. And we'll move on to item number 11.3, resolution number 10325. Mr. Kevin Snyder.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council. Again, Kevin Snyder, Director of Community Development. Would the council like me to wait for the Mayor Pro Tem to return?
You know what? That would certainly be wonderful.
Okay.
Given there are so few of us on the dais. It's kind of lonely up here.
Again, Kevin Snyder, Director of Community Development. This evening, Mayor Pro Tem and members of City Council, this item and the next item pertain to the Highway 111 Corridor specific plan. This particular agenda item pertains to the California Environmental Quality Act relative to your consideration of adoption of the specific plan. So as the City Council may remember, on September 18th, 2019, the City Council certified the program final environmental impact report for the City of Indio General Plan 2040. That program final environmental impact report was a comprehensive environmental analysis of the General Plan 2040, and it, in essence, reviewed all potential environmental impacts from the council's adoption of the General Plan 2040. So that is a living document, if you will. That comprehensive environmental analysis provides the opportunity to look forward to today. Under state law, when a city is considering adopting a specific plan, which is what the Highway 11 Corridor specific plan is, if the specific plan is in conformance with the general plan, which is a requirement of state law, then CEQA guidelines allow for what is called a finding of consistency. And basically what that means is that the specific plan is consistent with the general plan, which means that the specific plan is consistent with the environmental documentation for the general plan. And so this resolution in front of you is simply that. It's simply the council making a determination that the CEQA portion of the General Plan 2040 is applicable to the Highway 11 Corridor specific plan. And in adopting this resolution, you are making that determination, and that also means that no further environmental documentation is required. And that's simply what this action is. Obviously, the next item is more substantive, but this action, if the council so takes it on this resolution item, was simply just reaffirm that the CEQA documentation is consistent and affirmative for the Highway 11 Corridor specific plan. And I would note that your Planning Commission did make a recommendation to you 4-0 on August 24th, 2022, recommending that you do make the finding of consistency. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing at, what time we got here, 6:50? Do we have any public comments?
There are none.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Do we have any comments from our council? None over here. Mr. Miller, do you have any comments?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Ms. Ramos Amit? Don't hear any comments on that
I
end.
have no comment.
No comments there. Don't have any comments. I'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve. I'll make the motion to approve resolution number 10325, making a finding of consistency with the program final environmental impact report, FEIR, for the General Plan 2040, certified by the City Council on September 18th, 2019, for the adoption of the Highway 111 Corridor specific plan.
Right, we have a motion from Councilmember Holmes. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
I have a second from Councilmember Miller. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Holmes.
Aye.
Councilmember Miller.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramos Amit.
Nay.
And Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-1.
Thank you. And we'll go ahead and move on to item number 11.4, resolution number 10326, Mr. Kevin Snyder.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Again, Kevin Snyder, Director of Community Development. So this evening, we're asking the council to consider the potential adoption of the Highway 11 Corridor specific plan. And this plan, I do need to note, is funded by a $310,000 grant from the state Department of Housing and Community Development. The city was a recipient of this grant, and this grant facilitated the planning process for the document that's in front of you this evening. Sometimes you have to go backwards to go forward, so I'm just going to give a little bit of a quick history of what led us to here today. In 1997, the City Council adopted a specific plan for the western portion of the Highway 11 corridor called the MUSP 300, Mixed Use Specific Plan 300. That the boundaries of that ran from Jefferson to Clinton Street. And then The remainder of the corridor was regulated by regular zoning until approximately 2005, when the city council then adopted the Central Highway 11 Corridor Specific Plan. And that basically covered about 86 acres in and around the Indio Fashion Mall, inclusive of the Indio Fashion Mall. So those two specific plans are the living documents today. The remainder of the corridor, extending all the way to Indio Boulevard, that is not covered by the specific plan, is covered by regular zoning. When the City Council adopted the General Plan 2040, you set a new vision for the Highway 11 corridor. You set a vision of a connected corridor. And what that really means is that not only would there be connections to the public sphere or the public spaces, there would be connections between properties. I distinctly remember standing in front of you during the adoption of the General Plan 2040 and the City Council members, several of you talking about the frustration of having to literally get in your car to go from one property to another, and the goal of a future Indio where citizens could travel not only to public spaces such as sidewalks, but also between properties in a convenient way that did not always necessitate getting in the car. So the plan is focused on connectivity. The General Plan 2040 also envisioned a much more mixed use Highway 11 corridor. It also envisioned a much more robust corridor full of retail and employment opportunities. And finally, the plan looked at the corridor as something that would be a sense of arrival and a sense of place. Very honestly, Highway 11 corridor is very similar to many corridors you find in many communities, not only in the state of California, but throughout the United States, where they were previous state highways. They were focused on getting people in vehicles through as quickly as possible. And they, in essence, were a version of freeways. So the Highway 11 corridor that exists in the city, there's a term in the general plan that is called, it's a rip turning into a zipper. And the premise is that right now, the Highway 11 corridor separates parts of the community. The plan has a goal of bringing them back together through investments in public and private spaces. So that's what the plan does. The plan, however, we knew going into this at the staff level and working with our consultants that we needed to be market realistic. Many times planning documents are put together and honestly, they don't always go anywhere because they're not market realistic. So in hiring our consultant team, we made a purposeful decision to hire the lead consultant with a real estate economist firm. And we wanted that firm to ground truth us through the entire planning process to make sure that we weren't creating the proverbial pie in the sky planning document that would never really fit into the market. And we believe we've done that. Now, the plan is bold. The plan does push the envelope. Honestly, it's going to make some people uncomfortable, particularly if they're used to a certain way of developing. But it fits within the vision that the community asked of the city council, that your planning commission recommended to you, and that you adopted on September 18th, 2019 for the General Plan 2040. It attempts to make the future Highway 111 a much more distinctive place, a much more connected place, and a much more inviting place to not only drive, but to walk or to bike. So that's the premise behind the plan. Several things that we tried to do throughout the planning process is we tried to make the plan flexible. It's not a one-size-fits-all plan. Every piece of property has a unique condition and every development has a unique situation. So in the planning document, there is opportunities for application of flexibility. We also recognized that, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier in another agenda item, that this has a long-term planning horizon. It is reasonable to expect that any transformation, large-scale transformation of Highway 11 you're talking in decades. And that usually happens, particularly when a corridor has been substantially built out in a pattern over 30, 40, or 50 years, which is what has happened with the Highway 11 corridor. So in doing that, we recognize that there needed to be some allowances for land uses that wouldn't normally be the land uses you would want to see long-term, but also recognize that over time, market forces may encourage those land uses to either be redeveloped or to not come forward because other land uses are more profit oriented for developers and or for property owners. So we term that limited land uses, and I used that term earlier. And what that really focuses on are those kind of land uses that are more auto oriented, and recognizing that the corridor itself is 3.9 miles in length. We broke the corridor up into sub areas, and each sub area has an identified number of limited land uses that staff is proposing be considered in addition to what's already existing. So if a sub area already has a drive-through restaurant, it doesn't mean that they can't have another one. It's just in the plan, it says this is the limit that at the staff level and that we're recommending that for council consideration. It does include things such as fast food restaurants. And I think it is relevant to point out, and it's already come up in the conversation this evening, that market forces have changed, and many businesses that do provide services do need that drive-through element. But the plan allows for that, but it also sets a higher bar for higher quality building and site design. So gone are the days when you could put a building up, put a little canopy over the drive-through window and call it good. This plan requires a more intensive design effort. It requires that it be scaled appropriately. It requires that there are clear pedestrian connections. It requires enhanced landscaping. It requires integration, between the building and the drive-through area, so that rather than just being kind of an add-on, it becomes part of the overall architecture of the building. And so in doing that, we're trying to balance the concerns about automobile-oriented uses and the impacts they can have with the market realities, but also holding them to a higher design and development standard. So we do allow that. Now, those specific plans, the ones I mentioned that were adopted earlier, they did not allow for drive-through uses. And so Councilor Ramos-Amith was certainly correct earlier in referencing that they are not allowed. And that is why you do not see many of them, except for in those areas where there's regular zoning applied and they are allowed on a conditional land use basis. You don't see a lot of them. And the plan doesn't propose to add a lot more, but it also does propose to be market realistic. And speaking as a planner, the worst thing planners can do, in my estimation, is to give a council, a decision-making body such as yourself, a plan that does not have market realities. And that's what we've tried to deliver to you this evening. So with that, I wanted to just provide that overview. I do have one additional thing I want to point out that the plan does. The plan has a section called implementation strategies, and there are various strategies in there. And the plan includes something that is new for the city, and it includes strategies around anti-displacement. If the corridor is successful in revitalizing, what we want to try to avoid is the adjacent communities being negatively impacted by that, whether it's an impact in property values, whether it's an impact in people feeling that they cannot live there. So we have strategies identified in the plan that we will work on through the long-term implementation of the specific plan, if the council does adopt it, to help to assure and address that those displacement issues are mitigated to the best of the city's ability. So that is something new for the city. It's something I'm kind of proud of because none of our planning documents have done that to date. For those of you that are involved in our recent grant process for the Transformative Climate Communities, we are proposing that for that particular grant exercise. But this would be the first planning document in the city that would specifically direct us to focus on that. And I think it's an appropriate thing to do when you're bringing revitalization opportunities to areas. You want to make sure that the adjacent communities aren't negatively impacted by that. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions prior to the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
So, go ahead, Councilmember Amit, because I think we're going to say the same thing.
Yes, Mr. Snyder, I totally agree with everything you said, but everything you said does not jive with drive-thrus. Our city was founded, the 111 corridor was founded in the whole Coachella Valley. And to date, we still have the most drive-throughs in a concentrated area on 111 in the entire Coachella Valley. The city of Indio is 37 miles square. There's plenty of market opportunity throughout the city. I think that we could revitalize the Highway 111 corridor by bringing it back to what it should be, which is a pedestrian-friendly, interconnected commercial district. So my recollection of the last conversation we had was that we would have no more curb cuts, that there were not going to be any more drive-throughs in this very short part of our community. So I'm kind of amazed by the conversation going the direction that it is now. And that's more of a comment than a question, but I wanted to make sure to get that out because I'm not sure where this item's going to head. If we're going to revitalize it, how are we going to do that? By making it worse than what it is today, by oversaturating it with projects that are going to take away from connectivity and pedestrian friendly and bicycle friendly. So I need you to make that comment because I totally agree with what our vision was in the General Plan 2020. I totally agree with what you said, but what you being proposed does not jive with that.
Thank you, Ms. Ramos-Smith.
Before I make my comments, is there someone with a phone on speakerphone? Because it's, or was that feedback from?
I think that was from. Yeah.
Okay. I have to say, I agree. I think there's a point here. If we have so many fast food and so many curb cuts, then it's just like anywhere in USA. Now, I've seen how we've elevated that fast food drive-in experience. There on Jefferson. It's phenomenal. It's really terrific. But gosh, I am challenged with how many more curb cuts Highway 111 can handle and not have issues with traffic and not remain congested and so on and so forth. And so this requires a CUP, correct? But it's that process goes through Planning Commission, not council. And so, I guess I would be able to manage this or feel a little bit better about this if that CUP process specific to Highway 111 fast food and curb cuts went through council for most things. Would that be a possibility?
Go ahead, Mr. Stein.
The short answer is yes. Please remember, this is a policy-making process. The council is the final decision maker. You establish the regulations. If council wants to elevate the decision-making, similar to what happened with this document where Planning Commission makes a recommendation to the city council and city council conducts a public hearing and makes the final decision, that's certainly within your authority as a council and a policy-making body.
Thank you. And I think I'm a little bit more accepting. Look at Panera. The world has changed. The market has changed. And everybody, and you don't even have to have the fast food per se, but the fast casual, people want to drive through. They'll probably drive through Martin's Steakhouse if that opportunity presented themselves. That's kind of where we're at. I understand that. I see that. Have to accept that. But I guess I would like, as a council member, eyeballs on as these opportunities arise, if that's possible. Otherwise, I'm all in.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Miller, any comments?
Yeah, a little bit. Kevin, thank you for putting this out to us. It's exciting to see. I've seen a few specific plans over the years in these areas, from the mall into the area entryway where Jackalope Ranch was supposed to start us off. So when you're talking about not affecting the community neighborhoods, are you talking about by the development that it will cause blight? Are you talking about that it might have an impact on the prices? When you say that, how do you mitigate that, and what is it specifically are you concerned with, and what are you talking about?
Thank you, council members. So in essence, what we're talking about primarily is issues of gentrification that might impact surrounding neighborhoods as the corridor revitalizes This can happen. It doesn't happen in every community, but it can happen. So in our implementation strategies, we want to, first of all, be actively monitoring that. So that's a commitment at staff level. Two, as developers come forward, and if they're asking for special considerations from the city, you've heard the term community benefit agreements, and there might be opportunities to engage in community benefit agreements whereby the adjacent neighborhoods are benefited. Each situation is different, so I can't give you a concrete example. But if, for example, there were missing sidewalks in the adjacent neighborhood, and that would benefit that neighborhood, then the community benefit agreement could become as a tool where the council could consider that to mitigate the impact by improving the public sphere in that adjacent neighborhood. That's just an example, a theoretical example. So the idea, though, is that to be mindful and to pay attention and to be strategic and action oriented where appropriate. So as the corridor revitalizes, you don't have the unintended consequences of that positive revitalization in the corridor on the adjacent neighborhoods, such that they feel that the end result is it was good for the corridor, but not good for them.
No, got it 100%. And I agree. And I see where Councilmember Meat and Holmes are coming forward with the curb cuts and that. But as the Councilmember Holmes indicated, the times have changed. I'm not against it as long as there's a CUP. I don't have a problem if they want to bring it to council. So that's something we can discuss as a group when this is all done. But when you're looking at some of the benefits, would it be something that if we were to have, let's say, a assisted living home, just using an example, I'm not saying that's what it goes there, and they were to build affordable housing behind it, that we might accept that as part of it, as a group, as going forward, is what they can bring to the table to not only make the corridor better, but also the community better? Is that something that you're looking at in terms of opportunities?
Councilmember, that could certainly be an example of a potential situation where a form of negotiation might go on between the developer and the city to as an offset for whatever considerations they might be asking of the city beyond what is normal.
Okay. I'm good at looking outside the box. I appreciate it. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. And I also appreciate those efforts on behalf of the city of looking to protect our residents there, because we have seen, in so many communities, the revitalization caused that displacement of residents. So really appreciate that effort. I want to go ahead and open up the public hearing. We do have some public comments here. So I go ahead and open the public hearing at 7:10. I have one comment from somebody named Brent. Sorry, I can't read the last name.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. Good evening. My name is Brent McManigal with the firm of Fenimore. I'm counsel for a project that's being proposed in the Midtown District by the name of Palmera. It's a multifamily project that we're excited to bring into the city. We've been working with staff for most of the time over this specific plan and appreciate their insight and their development of the project, and we've enjoyed working with them. And we enjoy bringing our project forward after this plan is approved. We hope to be before the council and planning commission later on this year. And we want to thank you for the vision that this is bringing to help revitalize this important corridor. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you. I have another comment from Mr. Tab Johnson on Zoom.
Yes, thank you very much. Again, Tab Johnson, representing the owners of the Food for Less Shopping Center at the corner of Monroe and Highway 111. And again, I want to thank Kevin for taking his time to kind of walk me through the specific plan and the overlay and how it works. I think that what staff has done to create a flexible plan really is remarkable. I think they've done a good job. They've thought a lot of things through. The only question I had for Kevin that I wasn't sure that we got quite clear was on the existing pad buildings. And I specifically talk about the Denny's that we have out in front of that center. If it were to go through a major remodel and would it then be prohibited from some of the, or some of that because of the way the specific plan is orientated and the number of uses that are allowed or not allowed? I just want to make sure that, Denny's has gone through a fairly good remodel once. We've re-upped, and I think they're going to be there. It's a good unit for them. And I just want to make sure that they have the ability to upgrade their store as they see the market upgrading, and hopefully as Highway 111 upgrades, and that they wouldn't be left out in the cold if they came later and there were already others that have built out and the limited use had been already taken by others down the street. I will say one thing though, that I do believe in a shopping center like this, that any type of remodel or addition would not add curb cuts to Route 111. There may be a situation where you have a very small lot further down, but this is a very large commercial corner, and obviously everything would fit into the way it's designed now, and I couldn't imagine anything adding curb cuts to Highway 111. We are connected to our property to the east also, so I think we've got one stride there to work with the specific plan. But I just wanted to hopefully get Kevin to. I know he was talking with me about it. I wasn't sure if he was exactly sure. I just wanted to make sure that our existing pad wouldn't be counted as one of those numbers, and or a remodel of that wouldn't be inhibited by the specific plan overlay as it's played. Other than that, I think they've done a great job. And I hope the council votes their approval for it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Johnson. I have one more comment from Mr. Chris Fahey. How you doing?
I'm great, thanks. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. My name is Chris Fahey. I'm president of the Hagen Company. We're developing the Indio Mall, the old mall, now the Grand Marketplace. And I'm here just let's start off to say that we've had a great experience. We're kind of winding down on all our entitlement documentation now. So it's really exciting, and had a great collaborative effort with your staff throughout this. I'm here tonight to respond and to make a request under a section of the specific plan. As part of the specific plan document, you were presented with a document that's called the revised section 311, which is private signage. And as we approached this project years ago on the design of it, and you'll see a site plan come up in a minute, on a project of this size, we always prepare what we call a sign program, which is a all-inclusive signage plan for small shops, all shops, street signage, et cetera, throughout. The challenges with this mall have been that it's an internal mall, internal-facing mall. The retailers don't get that exterior exposure that you'd normally get in a neighborhood center, corner center type of project. So we designed 3 different types of perimeter signs, and that's what I'm going to discuss. I'll limit my discussion to that tonight because that's what I'm asking for. The 3 types of signs are monument signs, which are the shorter 5-foot high monument signs that you'll see typically in front of a restaurant on the street. Oh yeah, you're gonna try me. Gonna try me on that, huh? This? Yep. Okay. Hey, there we go. And I'll run you through the 3 types of signs. One is we call a major. In your specific plan, it's a major pylon sign, which is a tall, big sign. We typically design these for our anchor tenants. And we show here, we've got 6 anchor tenant signs on it. Second type of signage is a smaller sign for smaller tenants. This sign shows at 17-foot height. We've agreed with staff to reduce that height to 12 foot. This is again signage along the perimeter of the shopping center. And then the third type sign is the monument signs that I had mentioned. And on all these signs are allowed under the agreement. I'm just asking for additional signs that aren't allowed under the current specific plan as it's structured. I'll direct your attention to Monroe Street first. On the portion of the new development where we show the hotel property and the restaurant properties on Monroe, and you'll see the new entrance there at Las Palmas. Our intention was that the Las Palmas was going to be a major gateway into the project, to share equal importance with people accessing the project as the driveway off of Monroe. In addition, the traffic on Monroe is different than the traffic on 111. You don't always have the same travel both ways all the time, and so we felt Monroe was a important arterial to be able to advertise the project. Under the current specific plan, the restaurant tenants on Monroe are not allowed a monument sign because the specific plan has restricted monument signs to the Highway 11 corridor. And so I'm asking for those two signs for those restaurant tenants. The third sign on Monroe is again, the major pylon sign. And this is the similar sign that I showed where we're going to have this at our main entrance on Highway 111. We're also asking it for Monroe, again, because Las Palmas is going to be an important intersection now, we believe, and Monroe Street is going to be is obviously an important arterial. And we think this helps develop and bring the whole project together as a whole. And then lastly, the next additional sign that I'm asking for is one of this kind of shorter, what we call tenant monument signs. And that is along Highway 111. The existing specific plan allows for only two of these tenant monument signs or tenant pylon signs along Highway 111. We showed three here in our sign program. And the one sign that I've identified there that says not allowed under the specific plan, this was an actual sign, again, the tenant monument sign that we were going to dedicate to the restaurants and food tenants in the mall. And because this driveway off of 111 has a continuous travel back to the, I'm sorry. Okay. Has a continuous pathway to the rear of the mall, which is going to be a big portion of the attention of the mall where the food hall is and the food tenants are. So I'm asking for these four signs that aren't allowed under your current specific plan. The designs are consistent with what is allowed under the specific plan. The numbers of signs just aren't. So, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Mr. Snyder, would this be something that we would bring back during an agenda item, a CUP process, or?
Just to clarify, Mayor Pro Tem, are you talking about the signage specifically?
Yes.
Okay. So the council, again, this is a policymaking process. You as a council could decide how you wanted to consider review of things such as signage. As it's set up, it would be reviewed as part of the entitlement process. If the council, for example, wanted to have the Planning Commission make recommendations on proposed signage, and then that elevates to the city council for final decision-making, that is the council's prerogative. I would note just a couple of things in relation to what Mr. Fahey talked about. First of all, we subsequent to the Planning Commission consideration of this, we were contacted by Mr. Fahey and the Hagen team, and we did review their concerns. And because of the uniqueness of this particular development, we did appreciate the fact that there was some different signage considerations for this type of retail center that might exist along other parts of the corridor. So the plan does allow for the majority of signage, as Mr. Fahey was talking about. We did at staff propose a limitation on the number of signs based on the trying to balance the need for business supportive signage with assuring that there wasn't too much visual clutter related to signage along both Highway 111 and Monroe Street, both of which are major arterials in our city. But again, similar to the conversation you just had about drive-through restaurants, if council wanted to reserve the opportunity to review the signage portion of an entitlement package relating to signage, you certainly could. You could be specific to the Indio marketplace if you wanted to. This particular revised signage code does identify that the signage that Mr. Fay was talking about is for 150,000 square feet and greater commercial centers. So it would the signage that we're talking about, the additional what we're calling minor pylon signs, the 12-foot signs, the major pylon signs, those would be eligible for those commercial developments that are 150,000 square feet in gross leasable area or greater. If you're under that, then you wouldn't have the opportunity to do the signage that is at the level that's proposed to you or that Mr. Fahey is asking to you to consider. So there's an attempt to kind of focus it and not it wouldn't be available to everyone in the corridor, but because of the size and the scale of this center, we did agree with at the staff level that different signage considerations should be considered.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Mayor?
Yeah. So currently, if they were looking for approval on that, would they go through the planning commission?
It would typically, yes. The majority of the entitlement processing goes through planning commission.
I'm fine with that. Yeah.
I'm okay with that. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem? Yes.
First, I want to go ahead and close the public hearing. We'll close the public hearing at 7:24. Do we have any other comments from council members?
I do, if I could, Mayor Pro Tem.
Go ahead.
Kevin, on this, because of the uniqueness, not only of this, I mean, we've been waiting for this mall to come for many years, and because it sits back like it does, and restaurants are going to be a premium to make this mall work. I mean, malls are a dying breed, as you know. I mean, all you have to do is look at the Palm Desert Mall and see how many shops and everything are missing out of that and how many more are going to go. To give them an advantage by signage, by being able to do it, doesn't seem like a stretch. And to change it after, they've already been doing this planning and all the other stuff they thought, doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I can see a pylon sign just for the restaurants, especially if he has a corridor and it sits back. Why can't you guys take this one differently than the rest of the corridor, considering it's already in the pipeline? Or is it something that you would go back to the planning commission and they would go, but you're saying they can't have that number of signs? So if we approve this, can the planning commission even go back and do it?
So if I can respond. So great question, council member. I'm going to put it in the simplest way possible. It's your decision. As professional staff, we made a recommendation to you based on what we felt was appropriate. Certainly, Mr. Fahey has put forward market considerations for you as the operator of the mall for you to consider. As I said earlier, we're trying to balance the business needs of the operator with the visual aesthetic of the corridor, not only Highway 111, but also Monroe Street. But at the end of the day, it is council's decision. If you believe that it's appropriate and necessary to support Mr. Fahey's request to support the redevelopment planning for the mall, that is certainly within your prerogative, and staff will follow.
Yeah, I think the question is, if we approve this as is, does he have the opportunity to go to the planning commission and get that approval for the extra signage?
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to answer that second. So if you approve as the version that has come to you as the attachment to your staff report, then Mr. Fahey would be limited in the amount of signage that he could do to what's contained in there, which would not be what he's asked you to consider this evening. So the planning commission would not have that authority because you have adopted regulations that limit their ability to approve something that the council has not granted through the decision-making process on the specific plan.
Is there any other avenues that he has available if we pass this as is to get the signage that he needs?
The only other avenue is to come back and advocate for your reconsideration.
So I've got to love the government process. So we have to deny this in order to allow them to have their signs. That's essentially what I'm hearing. And then do we revisit this? I guess this sounds like an awfully convoluted process to me.
No, and I think the secretary wants to jump in. It's actually very simple. You can accept Mr. Fahey's proposal and as the resolution, as the adopting language is written, it's written in a way that it would adopt signage standards that you decide on this evening. So if you accept Mr. Fahey's proposal in terms of what he's asking you to allow, then that would be incorporated into the final plan, and that would be the signage regulation for this center.
But I guess what we're asking is, what is the mechanism for accepting that?
It's adopting the specific plan with the revised signage regulations, inclusive of Mr. Fahey's request.
And I don't have a problem with that person. I think signage is so important to all development, especially on, like I said, the I-10 corridor. But City Attorney, if you'd like to say something, that's fine. But I just think we really need to look at this. We've waited too long to bring this mall up to have something small as the signage be an issue. It's got to be able to be successful for just not only that community, but for also the city. I mean, if we're going to invest that kind of money, it's got to be successful.
Okay, City Attorney, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. At the risk of repeating the Community Development Director, what you have in front of you, over the course of about 250 pages, are the rules for the Highway 111 specific plan area. A few changes to a few sentences in there could achieve the result that they're asking for, and it would allow the entitlements to go forward as they requested. So just to give you an example, I'm looking at page 199 of the draft civic plan, which is page 1500 of your agenda and backup. One of the standards there for monument signs says monument signs shall be permitted along Highway 111. One of the questions that we received was, I'd like to be able to put them on arterials as well. So the council could say we approve the specific plan as amended, which would be monument signs are permitted along Highway 111 and arterial roads. Same thing for the other three comments. So there's a limitation on the number of minor pylon signs at 2. I think it was requested that they would have the ability to do 3. So that's on page 203 of the specific plan. So I think if the council wanted to accommodate the request, I think staff has, we understand what the applicant's asking for. You could approve the specific plan with the amendments recommended by the member of the public, and we could proceed in that way. And then you would have an amended specific plan that allows those signs to go forward.
So in that method, then we would be approving that for other developments as well, not just the mall.
It would be generally applicable to the specific plan area. Most of these that I looked at least the ones that were relevant, are for commercial centers of 150,000 square feet or more. So, if we get more of these projects, great. But generally speaking, it's going to be applicable to the larger projects.
Okay. Any other questions from our council?
I'm good with that amendment.
I wanted to see if you could address the question from Mr. Tab Johnson on the existing pads.
Sure, it's a good question. I did speak with Mr. Johnson separately about that. So his concern is that if they have an existing user, he used Denny's as an example, and let's say that in a corporate decision making, to use Councilmember Holmes' reference earlier, like Panera Bread, they made a decision that their stores need to have a drive-through element or a pickup window element, depending on how you define that. His question directly to me was, am I going to, number one, are they going to be allowed to do that under the new specific plan? And number two, if you're limiting drive-throughs, will that be counted against them in terms of there's already a certain number in the area? And I think reasonably, if it's an existing business and they are adding something such as a drive-through component, I don't think it would be fair to penalize them. What we're really talking about is an additions, new additions, such as a new fast food restaurant, for example. So for Mr. Johnson's benefit, because we did talk about this earlier, from my vantage point, that's not how the plan is supposed to work. The plan is supposed to work on new facilities being added. If you're in a sub area that has existing limited land uses, then the plan only is focusing on what you're adding, not the existing. And if I could just take a moment, there were several references made to curb cuts. And I do want to point out two things. One, the plan has a vision of connectivity. And one of the reasons why we are pushing that is the general plan that the council adopted wanted to avoid the curb cut situation, particularly on major corridors like Highway 111. So I can certainly, having lots of conversations with the city engineer in the past, it is a major safety issue to keep adding curb cuts along Highway 111 corridor, right? So what we would like to do over time is to connect properties.
so that you can travel between properties and not necessarily have to go onto the public right of way. That has the added benefit of limiting the number of new curb cuts. And as Mr. Johnson pointed out, his property and the adjacent property already have that in place. So you can travel between them without having to go back onto Highway 111, which is a very real life example of what we're talking about. Finally, I want to thank the city attorney for clarifying the signage. We are, if it is the council's direction, just in general to accept Mr. Fahey's request, we know what the changes we need to make, and we're happy to do that. That is your policy-making prerogative, and we will follow your direction. As it relates to council review of the limited land uses, you certainly talked about the potential for elevating drive-through oriented uses for council consideration. Other limited land uses that we've talked about include car washes and also convenience markets and fuel stations. So as the council goes into its deliberation, my only request is if you are wanting to elevate just the fast food restaurants, the drive-through fast food restaurants for your review, if you could be specific to that, or if you want to elevate all the limited land uses, the examples, additional examples I just provided, if you could be clear about that so that we correctly represent that in the final plan, that would be helpful to staff.
It was car washes. What was the second?
So it would be limited land uses. We are looking at drive-through restaurant, or drive-through uses. It could be a drive-through bank. It could be a drive-through restaurant. Car washes and convenience markets and fueling station, which often are a pair anymore.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm ready, with the help of our city attorney, to attempt to make
I have a question.
a motion. Go right ahead.
So seeing how much concern there is over the drive-throughs, would we also want to include that for existing?
I would.
Okay. I think
That would be my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, I think we heard that from at least 2 of our council members. So I think that's a good idea.
Doesn't hurt to go over it.
And then what about the car washes and the convenience and fueling stations? Would you want that also elevated to the city council level or handled at the planning commission level?
I would say the planning commission level.
Just the drive-throughs elevated to the council?
Right.
I would be the opposite way. I would say all, because if you're worried about curtain cuts and you're worried about drive-throughs, then you bring them all in. How many are going to be there? I mean, if you're going to do it, do you really want do you really want another gas station? Do you really want another drive-through of any type of it, a bank or anything else? That gives you that authorization to look at it, see what the planning commission says, and then either agree with it or disagree with it. So
Councilmember Amit, any comments there? I don't hear any comments there. So I think I hear the consensus for fast foods, car washes, and convenience stores and fueling stations, those decisions to be elevated up to the city council level. I also hear the need to change the regulations on the monumental signs and pylon signs to be included for arterial roads as well as Highway 111.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem. What I had down was a proposed motion could be to approve resolution number 10326 with the 4 amendments to the sign regulations and a conditional use permit required for the 3 limited land uses, with the city council as the approval authority.
And I would just note planning commission as the recommending body.
And planning commission is the recommending body.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
Yes. I have 2 pages of notes here to try to figure this out. Okay, make a motion for resolution number 10326, adopting the Highway 111 corridor specific plan and repealing the Central Highway 111 corridor specific plan and the mixed use specific plan 300 MUSP 300 with revised signage requirements and the desire to elevate, I don't know, all land uses. City attorney, jump right in.
I would just say everything that the council member said with the 4 sign amendments that were proposed and then a conditional use permit required for the 3 limited land uses with the city council as the approving authority and the planning commission as the recommending body.
I couldn't have said that better.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilmember Holmes. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second by Councilmember Miller. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Holmes.
Aye.
Councilmember Miller.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ortiz.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We'll get, oh, sorry. And then, oh, that's it. Do we have any other public comments for items not on the agenda?
There are none.
No, I have one paper notice from Jonathan Becerra, but I don't see him in the audience. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next.
I apologize, Mayor Pro Tem. I just had a raised hand. Palacios. Palacios, can you hear us?
Yes, I could hear you perfectly now. Can you hear me?
Yes, if you could provide your name for the record.
Yes, of course. Lizette Palacios.
Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you for taking the time to listen to me. So my name is Lizette Palacios, resident of Indio and Project Vive volunteer. As a concerned mother and resident of Indio, I want to encourage the council to look into the adopting smoke-free environments, which is very important. This is no safe level of exposure to, there is no safe level of secondhand exposure to smoke. Breathing even a little indoor or outdoor secondhand smoke is not safe at all. And we all know that any level of exposure to secondhand smoke, whether it be a cigarette smoke, e-cigarette, aerosol, or cannabis smoke, is dangerous. And we can have long-term health impacts, both smokers and non-smokers. And we know that non-smokers are one of the big ones that are being very affected. We must also protect our children from secondhand. Children exposed to secondhand smoke are at risk for asthma and other respiratory illnesses. So more than 70% of adolescents reported having smoked a cigarette at least once. At the adolescent stage, the brain has not it's not completed its maturation. Adolescents are still going through critical periods of brain growth and development, and they are especially vulnerable to the toxic effects of nicotine. A study published in the journal Pediatrics found that the earlier youth are exposed to nicotine, the less likely they will be able to quit smoking. I would like to encourage the council to get smoke-free outdoor spaces as an agenda item. We should be doing everything we can to protect our young people from ever establishing this deadly addiction and the cancer it causes, as well as supporting those who are trying to quit. And I really want to say thank you for everything and all the education that you guys have provided and all the support for our community. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Palacios. City Clerk, do we have any other comments?
There are none.
Okay.
I apologize. I had another raised hand.
Oh, there we go.
Mr. Joseph Jonathan.
Hi there, council members. I just wanted to thank city staff. I've been representing and working with tenants for the upcoming cannabis application period. And I just wanted to again thank Nico and Kevin, the rest of the planning staff and everybody else. It's been a very professional process to go through, and I know it's a very short time period and a lot that's been asked of them. So I wanted to thank everybody for their diligent work, their hard work, quick responses, and just being very thorough all throughout. I think it'll do the city very well for the application and review process. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Any other comments, Ms. Castillo?
There are none.
Okay, seeing no other comments, that concludes our joint city council meeting, and our next meeting will be October 5th, 2022. The time is now 7:41 p.m. Thank you and have a good evening.